the interment of the King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBheka uZulu Isilo Samabandla will take place, and the King left instructions on how it should happen. To help us understand the interment rites of a king, I'm joined now by the Executive Director of the Heritage Development Trust, Professor Musa Xulu. Prof, good evening and thank you very much for your time. I suppose there's a whole lot of curiosity and the unknowns about this particular process. This king has been in power and alive for 5 decades, so a younger generation might not be aware of what the rights are and what the process is. Just first and foremost, talk to us about the privacy of it all. Is that something that is uniquely given to the king because of the request that he made, or is that something that is part of the process for all kings?
Good evening.
Go ahead.
I did not hear you very. I did not hear you very well.
I'm saying the interment being done privately or in secret, I don't know which word is applicable here. Is that something that happens because this is per request by the king, or is that something that would have been afforded to all kings in the Zulu nation?
No, yes, no, thank you very much. No, the privacy, it's tradition. You have to remember that these are religious rituals that accompany burial of kings, and you'll find them in many cultures of the world, that certain steps have got to be predetermined in previous generations, that this is how you bury a king, but the details of that are seldom released to the general public. The privacy is done for 2 reasons. The first reason is that as few people as possible must know where the king is buried. Because while he is alive, he carries a lot of power around him. And when he dies and becomes an ancestor, it becomes even more powerful according to the African traditions and that religious systems. Now, if negative spirits from, let's say, witchcraft can interfere with that, it can really become quite a big problem for his family and for the entire nation. So as few as possible trusted people have got to know where the king is actually buried. In Zulu, it's actually the grave side of the king is called Idlinza. When you go there, you keep guessing where it is. You can't just know where it is. It is deliberately done so that negative spirits cannot interfere with the process of him becoming a seed that grows and leads to the growth of the nation even further after his supposed bowing out or death.
Now, Prof, we saw a goat being pulled to the marquee where the body of the king would have been received. Our cameras, of course, not allowed to film whatever it is that was going on there. Talk to us about sacrifices and offerings that are made during this process and symbolically what they mean.
Well, the blood is the major sacrifice. And in Zulu culture, there's 2 types of animals that will be killed in a burial. The first is cattle. Cattle are not very ritual. They are used for eating, for catering, and so on. The meat is used for that. But the goat, the blood of the goat, as well as its gall, inyongo, is essential as being central to ritualization of the entire occasion. The ritualization is to create a connection between the land of the living and the ancestral land, and so that those spirits can come together, so that during burial, both the spirits of the dead and the spirit of the living are together conducting the burial. It's it's important that a goat, as a medium or as a kind of as a spirit medium, gets killed there so that its blood mediates between the land of the living and the land of the dead, so that those two worlds come together and become one. There must be unity of all the spiritual worlds and this world where we are in. So to make it so that the burial of the king can be a seed, that's why he is planted, can be a seed upon which peace will prosper even more in future.
Now, there are concerns or other voices that are coming out around this whole process of interment, that sometimes it involves ukundlalelwa kwenkosi, which I don't know how to translate in English, if there is a word for it, and that having human rights implications of any sort. Are there any human rights violations that occur during the interment?
I didn't hear your first part very well.
I'm saying there are voices that are raising concern about the question yokundlalelwa kwenkosi when he's being interred, and whether or not there are human rights violations that come because of that process.
The voices that are being raised about
ukundlalelwa kwenkosi when he's being buried.
Yeah, okay, you mean like in the olden days when even people would be killed?
Yes.
To go to the grave with the king?
Yes.
Yes, that used to happen before, and I think it was stopped. You must remember also that Zulu society, after the death of Shaka, became slightly very much unstable. Maybe until King Pande, then the olden times began to come back, but then after King Pande, King Tachwaya fought with the English, and then King Newzroom and everyone until this king. So there was a lot of instability. But there has been change also towards the attitude of what you do with human sacrifice. So it's no longer done now. It's not going to be done today in this time. It used to be done in the times before, let's say, King Pande, it was done. So that, because there's a belief system that says the land of the dead, the ancestral land, is a land of the living where certain people must go there. He's a king here. When he goes to the ancestral land, he'll continue to be a king. And there must be servants and everybody who must serve him in that land, in that new state. It's a belief system, but it's no longer there now. I think it's been eradicated. It's not going to happen this time around.
Now, the word itself, you were touching on it a little bit earlier on, of ukutshalwa as opposed to being buried. Why the difference in interment? I think that's the English term for it, and just a normal burial.
The terminology.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a belief system that says the king lives forever. In one of my compositions on Shaka Zulu, we do sing about the spirit of the king.
All right, Prof, you still there?
Now, it lives forever. It becomes important that we don't use the word burying or and all of that. It's the seed. The king becomes, upon his death, the king becomes a seed. The seed that must go to the ground, so that on the ground it will then release the spirit for the nation to grow, even become much bigger than it was before, and much stronger than it was before. So it's not a burial. A burial means that the person is gone. It's no longer there. The planting means that it's like planting a tree. What is going to come out there is going to have lots of fruit for the nation. That is the reason why the terminology of burial is not used. It's used, the terminology of planting is the one that becomes used.
Yeah. Now, as this spirit is planted and it grows, what role does it play in the succession conversation and whether or not it comes up to give direction in any way? I don't know if you... Did you get me there, Professor?
Yeah, I got you saying as his spirit, and then you talk about succession.
Yeah, I'm saying does this spirit that is being planted play any role in the succession process that will then ensue whenever it begins?
Oh, yes. No, oh, yes, definitely. It does play a role. The king would have, because the land of the ancestors is the land of the living. It's a spiritual land. So the spirit of the king will be guiding, and again, I'm talking about a belief system. The spirit of the king will be guiding those who from tomorrow will have to look for the successor so that they arrive at the correct person that the king would have appointed, either in writing or verbally or maybe in his own wishes. The spirit, the planting means that the spirit is going to be there forever to guide the succession process. And whoever gets appointed, there will be signs that will show that he is the one that the king wanted him to be the king. The signs will be there for all to see.
All right, I appreciate your time. That is the Executive Director of the Heritage Development Trust, Professor Musa Xulu. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.